Captain Zethkar of the Hegemony Council stood before the holographic display, his forearms crossed in what humans might recognize as skepticism. The data streams flowing across the translucent blue surface told a story that defied everything the galactic community thought they knew about the newest species to join their ranks. "These readings cannot be accurate," he muttered, his translator converting the complex harmonics of his native tongue into standard galactic. The bridge crew of the CNS Eternal Dominion continued their work, but Zethkar could sense their unease through the pheromone filters. After 600 years of service to the hegemony, he had learned to read the subtle chemical signatures that betrayed emotion across dozens of species. Commander Yilsha, his second-in-command, approached with careful steps. Her crystalline form chimed softly as she moved, each footfall creating tiny musical notes that spoke of concern. "Captain, the human vessel is requesting permission to dock." They claimed to have a diplomatic envoy aboard. Zethkar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his people. Diplomatic envoy. These creatures have been in space for less than 2 of their planetary cycles, and they speak of diplomacy. He gestured toward the display with 2 of his arms while the other 2 remained folded. "Look at their ship, Commander. Primitive fusion drives, basic hull plating, and energy signatures that suggest they are barely containing their own reactor." The human vessel hung in space like an awkward metal insect next to the sleek, organic curves of the hegemony dreadnought. Where the Eternal Dominion measured 15 kilometers from bow to stern and incorporated biotechnology that had taken millennia to perfect, the human ship was a mere 300 meters of welded steel and stubborn engineering. It looked like something a child might build from scrap metal, yet it had somehow traveled the void between stars. "Sir," Yilsha's chimes took on a more urgent tone, "there is something else. The humans are broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Our linguists are having difficulty understanding the purpose." "Show me." The holographic display shifted, revealing cascading streams of data in formats that made no sense to any established galactic protocol. Numbers, images, sounds, and symbols poured forth in what seemed like chaos. Yet beneath the apparent randomness, Zethkar began to detect patterns. His species had evolved as predators, and pattern recognition was hardwired into their neural structure. "Are they trying to communicate?" he asked. "We believe so, Captain. But the complexity is unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be transmitting mathematical theorems, musical compositions, visual art, historical records, and what our computers identify as entertainment media. All simultaneously." Zethkar's third eye, the one that saw beyond the visible spectrum, focused on the data streams. In the overlapping patterns, he began to see something that chilled his warrior's heart. The humans were not simply broadcasting random information. They were creating a multidimensional puzzle, a test of cognitive ability disguised as chaotic communication. "Have our best cryptographers attempted to decode this?" "Yes, sir. They have been working for 6 standard hours. So far, they have identified 17 distinct layers of meaning, and they believe there may be dozens more." 17 layers. Zethkar's voice carried a note of respect despite himself. The most complex hegemony communications typically contain 3 or 4 layers at most. "And this is their standard greeting protocol?" "Unknown, Captain. This is our first direct contact with their species." The truth was more unsettling than Zethkar cared to admit. The hegemony had been observing Earth for over 50 of their years, ever since the humans had first begun transmitting radio signals into space. The Council had classified them as a primitive species, technologically interesting but strategically irrelevant. Their rapid advancement had been noted but dismissed as the typical exponential growth curve that most species experienced before plateauing at their technological limits. Then, 18 months ago, everything had changed. The humans had not simply achieved faster than light travel. They had done so using principles that the hegemony's best scientists claimed were theoretically impossible. Where other species had required thousands of years to develop stable warp field generation, the humans had somehow bypassed centuries of incremental advancement and created something entirely new. Their first starship had appeared in the Proxima Centauri system without warning, its energy signature unlike anything in the galactic databases. It had remained there for exactly 17 standard days before vanishing again, leaving behind only a series of mathematical proofs that had taken the hegemony's finest minds months to understand. The proofs had contained elegant solutions to problems that had puzzled galactic civilization for millennia. "Captain," the communications officer interrupted his thoughts, "the humans are responding to our docking clearance request. They are transmitting in perfect galactic standard." Perfect galactic standard? How is that possible? Our linguistic experts estimated it would take them years to achieve basic fluency. "Sir, they claim to have learned it from our own transmissions. They have been monitoring our communications for over 100 of their years." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of biotechnological systems. Zethkar felt his hunting instincts fully awaken for the first time in decades. The humans had been watching them, studying them, learning their language and customs while remaining hidden in their small solar system. How long have they been capable of detecting our transmissions? Unknown, Captain. But, if their claim is accurate, they have been passively observing galactic civilization since before they achieved nuclear technology. Zethkar's mind raced through the implications. The hegemony's first contact protocols were based on the assumption that primitive species would be overwhelmed by evidence of galactic civilization. They were designed to slowly introduce new species to the broader community, carefully managing their technological and cultural development to prevent shock or destabilization. But the humans had already been watching. They knew about the hegemony, about the dozens of species that comprised galactic civilization, about technologies and concepts that should have been far beyond their comprehension. And they had remained silent, developing in secret until they were ready to reveal themselves. Grant them docking permission, he decided. But maintain battle stations. I want to meet these humans for myself. The docking procedure revealed another unsettling truth about their visitors. Human ships, despite their primitive appearance, maneuvered with a precision that spoke of advanced artificial intelligence or exceptional pilot skill. The small vessel slipped into the Eternal Dominion's docking bay with movements so smooth they seemed choreographed. Zethkar made his way to the diplomatic receiving chamber, his forearms adjusting his ceremonial armor as he walked. The chamber had been designed to accommodate dozens of different atmospheric requirements and gravitational preferences. Environmental fields could be adjusted within seconds to make any known species comfortable. The humans had requested an atmosphere consisting primarily of nitrogen and oxygen at what they termed sea-level pressure. Such a mixture was toxic to most galactic species, but the environmental systems adapted without difficulty. What surprised Zethkar was the humans' willingness to meet in a chamber that could be modified to accommodate their needs. Most primitive species insisted on meeting in their own ships, afraid to trust alien technology. The airlock cycled, and 3 figures emerged. Zethkar had seen images of humans in the intelligence reports, but meeting them in person was a different experience entirely. They were shorter than he had expected, barely reaching the height of his lower torso, but they moved with a fluid confidence that spoke of perfect adaptation to their environment. Their skin was various shades of brown, their hair dark, and their clothing appeared to be a mixture of practical function and aesthetic choice. The lead human stepped forward and performed what Zethkar recognized as a formal hegemony greeting, complete with the proper gesture of respect. Her pronunciation of galactic standard was indeed flawless, but there was something in her vocal patterns that suggested she was thinking in her native language and translating in real time. "Captain Zethkar of the Hegemony Council," she said, "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing Earth's United Nations. Thank you for granting us this audience." Dr. Vasquez. Zethkar studied her with all 3 of his eyes, noting details that his warrior's training had taught him to observe. Her heart rate was elevated but steady, suggesting controlled excitement rather than fear. Her posture indicated confidence without aggression. Most tellingly, her eyes never stopped moving, constantly cataloging details of her surroundings with the systematic precision of a trained observer. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Dominion. I confess, your species has presented us with several surprises." Surprises seem to be something of a human specialty, she replied with what he was learning to recognize as the human expression called a smile. We understand that our rapid technological development has been unexpected.
That is one way to phrase it.
Zethkar gestured toward the conference area, noting how the humans moved as a coordinated unit despite giving no apparent signals to each other.
Our scientists are quite curious about your faster-than-light capabilities. The theoretical framework you transmitted suggests approaches that our best minds consider impossible.
Impossible is a word we use carefully, Dr. Vasquez said as she took her seat. We have found that many things considered impossible are simply difficult, and many things considered difficult are simply misunderstood.
An interesting philosophy.
Tell me, Dr. Vasquez, how long has your species been aware of galactic civilization? The human smile never wavered, but Zethkar caught a subtle shift in her biochemical signature. She was prepared for this question. We have been listening for a very long time, Captain. Since we first pointed radio telescopes at the stars, we have been aware that we were not alone. When we began detecting structured transmissions from beyond our solar system, we realized that there was an entire community of intelligent species out here.
And you chose to remain hidden. We chose to learn. Her response was immediate and firm.
We are a young species, Captain Zethkar.
We make many mistakes, often catastrophic ones. Before announcing ourselves to galactic civilization, we wanted to understand what we were joining. And what have you learned? Dr.
Vasquez exchanged glances with her companions, and Zethkar realized he had just witnessed a complex communication conducted entirely through micro-expressions and subtle body language. Humans, he was beginning to understand, operated on multiple levels of interaction simultaneously. We have learned that the galaxy is vast and complex, she said finally. We have learned that intelligence takes many forms, and that cooperation is essential for survival.
We have also learned that every species faces challenges that test their adaptability. Challenges such as the devourers. The environmental systems automatically adjusted as every non-human in the chamber released stress pheromones simultaneously.
The devourers were not a topic typically discussed in first contact scenarios. They were the galaxy's nightmare, a species that consumed entire worlds and left nothing behind but empty space. The hegemony's greatest military achievement had been containing them in the galactic rim, far from inhabited systems.
You know about the devourers?
Zethkar's voice carried new respect and wariness in equal measure.
We know they exist.
We know they represent a threat to all organic life. We know the hegemony has been fighting them for over 3,000 years.
Dr. Vasquez leaned forward slightly.
We also know that traditional approaches have been largely defensive.
Traditional approaches have saved billions of lives. Yes, they have.
But the devourers continue to exist, continue to grow stronger, continue to probe for weaknesses in the containment grid. The human's voice took on a quality that Zethkar was learning to recognize as determination.
We have some ideas about alternative approaches. Alternative approaches? Humans have always excelled at solving problems that others consider unsolvable.
We specialize in finding new ways to look at old challenges. We would like to offer our assistance. Zethkar felt the predator within him stir to full alertness.
The humans were not asking to join galactic civilization. They were asking to help fight the galaxy's greatest enemy.
This was not the behavior of a primitive species seeking protection and guidance. This was the behavior of a species that believed it had something unique to contribute.
What makes you believe you can succeed where the hegemony has struggled for millennia?
Because, Dr. Vasquez said with that unsettling human smile, we think differently than anyone else you have ever met. As if to punctuate her words, the ship's communication systems chimed with an incoming priority message. The display revealed a hegemony patrol fleet in full retreat from the rim territories, their formation broken and their ships venting atmosphere. Behind them, space itself seemed to writhe with unnatural darkness.
The devourers were moving again.
The emergency klaxons of the Eternal Dominion painted the diplomatic chamber in strobing red light.
Captain Zethkar's forearms moved with practiced efficiency, activating command protocols while maintaining visual contact with the human delegation.
Dr. Vasquez and her companions showed no signs of panic or confusion. Instead, they observed the chaos with the same systematic attention they had shown everything else.
Report, Zethkar commanded through his personal communication device.
Sir, Patrol Fleet 7 is requesting immediate reinforcement. The Devourers have broken through the containment grid at coordinates 847-221-445.
Estimated breach width is 47 standard units and expanding. Dr. Vasquez stood smoothly, her movements precise and economical.
Captain, with your permission, we would like to offer immediate assistance.
Dr. Vasquez, you do not understand the nature of what we face. The Devourers are not simply another hostile species.
They are entropy given physical form, creatures that consume matter and energy at the quantum level. Our most advanced weaponry barely slows their advance.
We understand better than you might think.
She gestured to one of her companions, a tall human with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to calculate probabilities with every glance.
This is Dr. James Chen, our theoretical physicist. Dr. Chen, would you share your analysis?
The human called Chen stepped forward, producing a small device that he placed on the conference table. A holographic projection materialized above it, showing what appeared to be a three-dimensional mathematical model of incredible complexity. Captain Zethkar, Chen spoke with the precise diction of someone accustomed to explaining complex concepts to others. We have been studying Devourer activity patterns for approximately 60 years, ever since we first detected their quantum signatures in our deep space observations.
We believe we understand their fundamental operational principles. Zethkar felt his warrior instincts sharpen to a painful edge. You have been observing the Devourers? How? Humans have a saying, Dr. Vasquez interjected.
When you cannot solve a problem with force, you solve it with cleverness. We developed quantum entanglement detection arrays capable of sensing reality distortions across interstellar distances.
The Devourers create significant quantum disruptions wherever they appear.
The holographic model shifted, revealing patterns that Zethkar had never seen before. Where hegemony sensors detected the Devourers as chaotic energy signatures, the human display showed underlying mathematical structures of startling elegance. They are not random destroyers, Chen continued. They follow specific patterns based on quantum field fluctuations and gravitational resonances. More importantly, they appear to be tools rather than independent organisms.
Tools? Commander Yilshaw's crystalline form chimed with disbelief.
You suggest the Devourers are created beings?
We suggest they are weapons, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. Weapons deployed by someone or something that exists partially outside normal spacetime.
The Devourers themselves are merely the visible manifestation of a much larger threat. Another alarm sounded, and the ship's tactical display updated with grim efficiency. 3 more patrol fleets were reporting Devourer incursions along different sections of the containment grid. The attacks were coordinated, simultaneous, and strategically positioned to maximize damage to hegemony defensive positions.
Impossible, Zethkar muttered.
The Devourers have never shown tactical coordination on this scale.
Because until now, they have been testing your defenses, Chen replied.
Learning your response patterns, cataloging your capabilities, identifying your weaknesses. What you are witnessing now is the beginning of their actual offensive.
The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow.
For 3,000 years, the hegemony had believed they were containing an aggressive but relatively mindless threat. If the humans were correct, every defensive action, every tactical response, every strategic decision had been observed and analyzed by an intelligence capable of creating weapons that consumed reality itself. If what you suggest is true, Yilshaw said, her chimes taking on harmonics of fear, then, the containment grid is not a defensive measure.
It is a cage they allowed us to build around ourselves. Not a cage, Dr. Vasquez corrected. A laboratory.
They have been using your containment efforts to study galactic civilization, learning how you think, how you fight, how you organize your societies.
Now they have enough information to proceed to the next phase.
Which is
total consumption of all organic intelligence in this galaxy.
The bridge communication system crackled to life.
Captain, we are receiving priority transmissions from Hegemony Command. All defensive fleets are to fall back to core worlds. The Rim territories are being evacuated.
Zethkar felt something cold and unfamiliar settle in his gut.
Fear.
He had faced death in battle many times, had led fleets against impossible odds, had seen entire worlds consumed by war. But this was different. This was the fear of realizing that everything he had fought for, everything his species had built, was being systematically dismantled by an intelligence that had been studying them for millennia.
Dr. Vasquez, he said, his voice carefully controlled, you spoke of alternative approaches. What do you propose?
The human leader smiled, and, for the first time, Zethkar saw something predatory in the expression. We propose to do what humans do best, Captain.
We propose to cheat.
Cheat?
The Devourers and their masters have spent thousands of years learning how galactic civilization fights.
They understand your tactics, your technologies, your strategic thinking. But they have never encountered humans in combat.
Chen activated another holographic display, this one showing detailed schematics of human spacecraft and weapons systems. To Zethkar's experienced eye, the designs looked primitive, even crude compared to hegemony technology.
But, as he studied them more carefully, he began to see underlying principles that defied conventional understanding.
Your ships, Yilsha observed, they appear to violate several fundamental principles of engineering efficiency.
They violate a lot more than that, Dr. Vasquez replied with obvious satisfaction.
Human technology develops along different lines than galactic standard. We solve problems through adaptation and improvisation rather than optimization and refinement.
Our weapons are less elegant than yours, but they are also completely unpredictable. Unpredictability is hardly an advantage against opponents who consume matter at the quantum level. It is when your unpredictability extends to quantum mechanics itself, Chen said.
Captain, may I ask what you know about human history?
Zethkar consulted his internal database, accessing the limited information the hegemony had gathered about Earth.
You are a relatively young species that achieved technological civilization approximately 10,000 years ago.
You have experienced numerous conflicts, but have managed to maintain global unity for the past century.
That last part is accurate, Dr. Vasquez said dryly.
The rest requires some clarification.
Humans achieved technological civilization approximately 10,000 years ago, this is true.
But we have been fighting wars for our entire existence as a species. Not occasional conflicts, Captain. Constant, continuous warfare for over 200,000 years.
Constant warfare?
But your species still exists. Our species exists because of constant warfare.
We did not evolve as apex predators, Captain Zethkar. We evolved as persistence hunters, social problem solvers, and survival specialists. Every challenge that should have destroyed us instead made us more adaptable, more innovative, more determined to survive.
Chen gestured to the holographic displays, which began showing a rapid succession of images depicting human history. Wars, disasters, technological breakthroughs, social evolution, all compressed into a visual narrative that left Zethkar struggling to process the implications. We have fought wars with clubs, with spears, with gunpowder, with atomic weapons, with biological agents, with information systems, and with technologies that exist at the boundary between science and magic, Chen continued. We have survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and our own repeated attempts to destroy ourselves. Every time we have faced extinction, we have found a way to not just survive, but to emerge stronger.
What Dr. Chen is trying to explain, Dr. Vasquez added, is that humans specialize in fighting opponents that should be able to defeat us easily.
We have a natural inclination to find weaknesses in systems that appear invulnerable, to discover solutions that no one else has considered, to win battles that cannot be won.
Another communication burst interrupted their conversation. This time, the news was even worse. The Devourers were not just breaking through the containment grid.
They were systematically destroying the quantum anchors that maintained the grid's stability.
Within hours, the entire defensive network would collapse.
Captain, the communications officer's voice carried barely controlled panic, Hegemony Command is ordering all ships to retreat to the core worlds immediately.
The outer rim is lost.
Belay that order, Sethkar said, surprising himself with his decision.
Dr. Vasquez, you spoke of offering assistance. What exactly are you proposing? We propose to demonstrate why humans should never be underestimated.
She touched a control on her personal device, and the chamber's displays flickered as new information flooded the ship's data networks.
Dr. Chen, please show Captain Sethkar what we brought to share.
The physicist smiled, and his expression contained the same predatory quality Sethkar had noticed in Dr. Vasquez.
Captain, are you familiar with the concept of weaponized probability mathematics?
I am not certain such a concept exists.
It does now. Humans have a gift for making things exist that should not be possible.
Chen activated a new display, this one showing mathematical equations that seemed to shift and change even as Sethkar watched them. The Devourers operate by manipulating quantum probability to ensure that matter and energy decay rapidly when exposed to their influence.
They essentially convince reality that organized structures are statistically unlikely to exist. And you propose to counter this how?
By convincing reality that Devourer victory is statistically impossible.
Dr. Vasquez's smile broadened. Captain, we would like to introduce you to the concept of paradox weapons.
The ship shuddered suddenly, not from any external impact but from something far more disturbing.
Reality itself seemed to flex around them, as if the fundamental laws of physics were being rewritten in real time.
The emergency lighting shifted from red to colors that had no names, and, for a moment Sethkar experienced the unsettling sensation of existing in more than 3 dimensions simultaneously.
What was that?
Yilsha's chimes had taken on harmonics of pure terror.
That, Chen said with obvious satisfaction, was the sound of the universe learning something new about the nature of causality. We just activated our experimental defense grid around this sector.
The Devourers are about to encounter something they have never faced before.
Which is
a species that refuses to lose, even when losing is mathematically inevitable. Outside the ship, space itself began to change as human technology met Devourer weapons in combat for the first time.
The results would reshape both species' understanding of what was possible in the physical universe. Reality screamed.
Captain Sethkar had experienced many strange phenomena in his 6 centuries of military service, but nothing had prepared him for the sensation of watching the universe argue with itself. Through the observation ports of the Eternal Dominion, space twisted into shapes that violated geometry, colors that had no place in the electromagnetic spectrum, and patterns that made his predator brain ache with the effort of processing impossible information. Dr. Vasquez, he managed, his voice carefully controlled despite the chaos erupting around them, what exactly did your species just do? The human delegation remained remarkably calm as reality warped around them. Dr. Vasquez consulted a device that appeared to be tracking mathematical probabilities in real time, its display showing cascading equations that shifted faster than any organic mind could follow. We introduced the Devourers to something they have never encountered before, she replied. Stubborn humans who refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. Dr. Chen activated another holographic display, this one showing the battle in mathematical rather than visual terms. What Sethkar saw defied every principle of physics he understood. The Devourers appeared as areas of negative probability, regions where the universe agreed that matter should not exist. But, instead of the usual pattern of spreading entropy, they had encountered something that pushed back with equal force. The Devourers operate by convincing reality that organized structures are statistically improbable, Chen explained as the ship shuddered again. They essentially hack the quantum probability matrices that govern physical existence. Until today, they have never encountered a species capable of hacking back.
You can manipulate quantum probability? Not exactly.
We cannot change the fundamental laws of physics, but we have learned to argue with them very persuasively. Dr. Vasquez gestured toward the displays.
Humans have always been excellent at finding loopholes in systems that others consider absolute.
It was inevitable that we would eventually find loopholes in the laws of reality itself.
Commander Yilsha's crystalline form resonated with frequencies that indicated extreme stress.
But the energy requirements for such manipulation must be enormous.
How are your ships generating sufficient power?
They are not generating power, Chen replied with the satisfaction of someone revealing a particularly elegant solution.
They are borrowing it from alternate probability streams.
Every time reality chooses one outcome over another, there is a small amount of quantum energy released.
We have learned to collect and redirect that energy. You are stealing power from the universe's decision-making process?
Borrowing,
Dr. Vasquez corrected. With interest. Every time we use probability energy, we return more than we took. The universe actually benefits from the transaction.
Zethkar felt his understanding of physics crumble and rebuild itself around new principles.
That should be impossible. According to traditional understanding, yes. But humans have never been particularly concerned with traditional understanding.
She smiled that predatory human smile. We prefer to focus on what works rather than what should work.
The ship's tactical displays updated with information that made no sense according to established military doctrine. The Devourer incursions were not spreading or strengthening. Instead, they appeared to be contracting, pulling back into increasingly concentrated areas as if something was forcing them to retreat.
Captain, the communications officer reported, we are receiving transmissions from Patrol Fleet 7. They report that the Devourer advance has halted. The entities appear to be confused.
Confused?
Sir, they are no longer following predictable movement patterns. Their quantum signatures are fluctuating in ways that suggest internal conflict.
Dr. Chen nodded with obvious satisfaction. They are experiencing something new.
For the first time in their existence, they have encountered a force that refuses to be consumed.
They are trying to process this information and failing.
But surely they will adapt. All intelligent species adapt to new threats.
They would, if they were truly intelligent, Dr. Vasquez replied.
But the Devourers are tools, remember. Very sophisticated tools, but tools nonetheless. They were designed to counter known forms of resistance. They have no programming for dealing with resistance that violates their fundamental assumptions about reality.
And their creators are about to learn why challenging humans was a mistake.
As if summoned by her words, the ship's sensors detected something emerging from the quantum distortions where the Devourers had first appeared. The entity that materialized was unlike anything in galactic databases, a creature of pure mathematics given physical form, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Its presence caused reality to bend around it, creating areas where time moved backwards and space folded into impossible geometries. The Prime Intelligence, Chen whispered with something approaching awe.
The entity that created the Devourers. The Prime Intelligence spoke, its voice resonating through dimensions that most species could not perceive.
The ship's universal translator struggled with concepts that had no equivalent in any known language, finally, producing approximations that captured only a fraction of the entity's meaning.
Impossible resistance encountered. Probability matrices corrupted. Request clarification of local reality status. Dr. Vasquez stood and walked to the communication station. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing the human species. We hear your request for clarification. Human species unknown in galactic survey data. Quantum signature inconsistent with standard organic intelligence patterns.
Explain nature of resistance mechanism. We resist because we choose to resist. We exist because we refuse to stop existing.
We fight because surrendering would be boring.
Her response was delivered with the casual confidence of someone stating obvious facts. Your Devourers were designed to counter rational opposition.
Humans are not rational. Clarification required. All organic intelligence operates within logical frameworks. Resistance follows predictable patterns. Not human resistance.
We specialize in solutions that should not work, strategies that violate common sense, and victory conditions that exist outside traditional logic. Dr. Vasquez's voice carried a note of challenge. We suggest you withdraw your tools and reconsider your approach to this galaxy.
Negative. Galactic consumption will proceed according to established parameters. local probability disturbances will be corrected.
No, Dr. Vasquez replied simply.
They will not.
The Prime Intelligence paused, and, in that pause, Zethkar sensed something he had never expected to detect from such a powerful entity: uncertainty.
For beings that existed beyond normal spacetime, uncertainty was perhaps the most alien emotion possible.
Explain basis for absolute certainty regarding future probability outcomes. Because we are humans, Dr. Vasquez said, her voice carrying the full weight of her species' history. We are the descendants of persistence hunters who tracked prey across continents. We are the children of survivors who lived through ice ages with nothing but stone tools and determination. We are the inheritors of warriors who fought impossible battles against impossible odds and won because we refused to lose. She gestured toward the observation ports, where human ships were now engaging devourer forces in combat that redefined the meaning of impossible. We have spent 200,000 years learning how to survive against opponents that should defeat us easily. We have developed technologies by refusing to accept that certain things are impossible. We have built civilizations by solving problems that have no solutions.
Previous statements indicate logical inconsistencies. Problems without solutions cannot be solved. Watch and learn. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a demonstration of applied impossibility, a practical lesson in why humans should never be underestimated.
Human ships that should have been destroyed instantly by devourer weapons instead absorbed the attacks and converted them into additional firepower. Devourer entities that should have consumed entire star systems found themselves trapped in probability loops where they could only exist in states that prevented them from consuming anything. The most remarkable part was not the technology itself, but the casual way the humans employed it. They wielded paradox weapons and reality-bending devices with the same straightforward competence that other species used basic tools.
To them, manipulating quantum probability was simply another engineering challenge to be solved through persistence and creativity.
I do not understand, the Prime Intelligence admitted, its voice carrying harmonics that might have been frustration. Local reality parameters refuse to conform to established mathematical models. That is because human reality operates according to different rules, Dr. Chen explained patiently. We live in a universe where determination can overcome mathematics, where creativity can rewrite physical laws, and where the refusal to accept defeat can alter probability itself. Such conditions violate fundamental principles of logical existence. Only if you assume that logic is the only valid form of existence, Dr. Vasquez replied. Humans have learned to thrive in the spaces between logic, in the gaps where possibility meets impossibility and create something entirely new. The battle raged for 17 standard hours. When it finally ended, the Devourers had not been destroyed but transformed, their destructive programming replaced with curiosity protocols that turned them into explorers rather than weapons. The Prime Intelligence itself underwent a similar transformation, its rigid mathematical existence expanded to include concepts like wonder, creativity, and the peculiar human notion that impossible things were simply difficult things that had not been properly understood yet. I require extensive recalculation of universal parameters, the Prime Intelligence announced as its forces began withdrawing from the galaxy. Human variables introduce too many unknown factors for reliable consumption estimates. Take all the time you need, Dr. Vasquez replied graciously. We will be here when you are ready to try again. And we will be just as unreasonable as we are today. After the entity had vanished back into whatever dimension it called home, Captain Zethkar found himself alone in the observation lounge with the human delegation. The galaxy was safe, the immediate threat had passed, but he was struggling to process everything he had witnessed. Dr. Vasquez, he said finally, your species saved not just the hegemony, but all organic life in this galaxy. How do we possibly repay such a debt? You do not repay it, she replied with a smile that was no longer predatory but genuinely warm. You pay it forward. You remember that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than anyone realizes. You stay curious, stay adaptable, and never assume that impossible things must remain impossible. And, when the Prime Intelligence returns with new strategies? Then, we will show it new forms of impossibility. Humans excel at learning, Captain Zethkar. We get better with practice. Dr. Chen chuckled. Besides, by the time it returns, we will have had years to develop even more unreasonable technologies. I am particularly excited about our research into weaponized philosophy and combat applications of recursive humor.
Weaponized philosophy? Why not?
If you can weaponize mathematics and probability, philosophy seems like a logical next step. We are currently working on artillery shells filled with existential paradoxes and defense shields powered by the fundamental absurdity of existence.
Zethkar realized that his species, like the rest of galactic civilization, would need to completely reconsider their understanding of what was possible. The humans had not simply defeated an impossible enemy.
They had demonstrated that impossibility itself was merely another frontier to be explored and conquered.
"Welcome to galactic civilization, Dr. Vasquez," he said formally.
"Though I suspect it is we who will be learning from you."
"Learning is what intelligent beings do," she replied.
"The universe is vast and full of wonders we cannot yet imagine. We look forward to discovering them together." As the human delegation returned to their ship, Zethkar remained in the observation lounge, watching the stars and contemplating a future that had suddenly become far more interesting. Somewhere in the galaxy, impossible things were becoming possible, and the universe itself was learning to appreciate the peculiar logic of human determination. The age of anticipated impossibility had begun.